All right, let's move on to the final case that we're going to discuss. And this is from episode number 39, which was titled The Veil Between Worlds, Yossi Ronen's Encounters with Aliens and Experience of Non-Duality. Now, this is a fascinating case of an Israeli man who encountered aliens while he was living in Los Angeles as a young man. Specifically, he first had an experience with them while he was dreaming, but then to his shock, when he woke up, they were also in his manifest 3D reality. And like everyone else we've discussed, this was completely discombobulating for him. It was only by tearing apart his former view that he was able to reassemble a new conception of reality. But even then, this took many years and much introspection, including with the aid of hypnotic regression. And speaking of that, I'd like to quote from the book in a specific event where he is under hypnotic regression and trying to deal with why it is that it is so frightening to experience these others in your manifest waking world when it's not nearly as disruptive when you experience them in the dream world or the subtle realm. And in this hypnotic regression experience, even though Ronen is feeling very overwhelmed and frightened, his therapist encourages him to stay with the process. And in that process, these others share a perspective with Ronen. And this is what they say, quote, "You are afraid because the contact we have built with you, now that you are awake and conscious, face to face with us, is difficult for you. It is easier for you to experience us only through the inner consciousness, the part you call your soul, when your body is asleep and unconscious. The unfamiliar awareness you have between your body and soul. This experience is responsible for much of your body's paralysis. Since the soul is not physical like your body, it has no lifelike movements in the way that your body recognizes and exists with it. Your body does not understand this experience of total stillness. When the soul becomes aware of you through your body, you feel paralysis because your body does not know how to contain it, how to live and exist in this stillness. In terms of the physical body, which exists only within specific boundaries, to be spiritual like a soul, which has no boundaries, time, or movement, it instinctively feels like a death warning," unquote. Now, this is fascinating. I think this is a remarkable insight that Ronen comes to. And again, it speaks to the sheer ontological shock we experience in the presence of these others. And it's not often just because of the way they look, the fact that they're clearly intelligent but not human. It's not just that fight or flight response in us based on their physical appearance. It's also the way that some of them interact with us. Very often, experiencers share the fact that there is complete telepathic relay between them and us. In other words, our entire identity, our entire history, our deepest fears, regrets, shame, etc., is exposed to them. Of course, as human beings, we're not accustomed to living like this. We've built up a sheltered inner life that we keep separate from the world, separate from others. Many of these others apparently do not have this kind of experience. And to be clear, it does go both ways. Ronen can also experience all of their interiority, so to speak, as well. That's why I've coined the term total presence telepathy to describe the overwhelming sense of telepathic communication that happens between us and these others. It is not just linear thoughts shared back and forth. It is complete presence being available both ways. And because this is so overwhelming to such an astounding degree, it can feel like death. Because the small I, our small ego that has built up an identity in this iteration as an earthly vessel, is challenged to the extreme, is overwhelmed to the extreme by this experience, so much so that it can feel akin to death. That's essentially what these others are telling Ronen, and it's the realization he ultimately comes to. And again, I think this is an astonishing but highly insightful perspective. And in that sense, coming to peace with these experiences, coming to peace with being in communication with these others, is as much about reshaping and building from the ground up an experience of ourselves as it is about learning to experience and understand and live with them. And on that note, we've come to the close of another edition of the Point of Convergence podcast.